Such an important point is that you can't change what you're not aware of. You understand that? Like, if you're not aware of it, how can you change? I don't know.
Clue, right.
What you are going to be aware of is you're going to be aware of sort of circumstances and situations arising that you don't want to arise, that you don't want to manifest. So you're going to be aware of the results of your conditioning, but you're not going to be aware of the conditioning itself. You know, I always jokingly and lovingly say how I dated the same girl twice in a row. And different name, same girl. And swore I wasn't doing it the second time the whole time. And there I was. And I realized, oh my God, I just did the same thing again. And I never even knew that it was happening. It was craziness. It was absolutely crazy. So, in Satsang again, is to help you raise awareness and help you be aware. Satsang is a big mentoring session. Okay? And even when I'm working just with one person, you know, that mentoring is for everyone, and you may get something more than the person that I'm working with. Because you've got to see yourself. I'm like here to put up a big mirror and polish it as clearly as I can and be like, okay, just look. Because if you could see what was going on, you would change it.
Because if you feel a certain way, there's something that's making you feel that way. So it's not like when someone's like, oh, you made me feel that way. There's something inside of you that's making that feeling arise. So it's like, I know the other day I had that feeling and I did what you said, like look inside and what's causing that feeling so that you could address it, you know, and I felt emotional and I felt a certain feeling and I sat down and I got quiet because I was aware of that feeling and I wanted to know why am I feeling this way? What's causing that feeling? And I was able to get deep down inside and realize what was making me feel that way, and then realize that is falsely made up, or it happened in the past. It's not happening in my present.
Yeah.
So I was able to take that moment to get quiet, to see where it was all arising from, and be able to kind of process it, to rewire and say like, no, that's not true. That's false.
And you were able to stop or at least minimize the suffering that your mind was creating for you, that you were essentially creating for yourself, you could even say.
Oh yeah, the mind started going. It was like, you know, I'm like, okay, I don't want to feel this way. What's causing this? What's doing this? How can I stop, pause, figure where it's coming from? Why is this arising? And put two and two together and realize, oh, that feeling is coming from the past. That's not happening right now. That's why it's arising. And then I was able to take that thought and
more old conditioning. See that?
Let it go.
Yeah. And when you did that, you just changed a couple wires. You know? You just changed a couple wires in your brain. And it's you know, we create the suffering for ourselves. Doesn't that just tick you off? Like, isn't it just so much more fun to blame somebody else?
Yeah, but it gives you an out. It gives you a way out.
What does?
If you're creating my suffering, it stops when you decide to stop. If I'm creating my suffering, it stops when I decide.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole idea that there's got to be something that I'm doing that's making me feel like this, and you know, you talk about your mind going crazy. To me, that's kind of when my mind doesn't want me to look at something. Right, so if you can use some of these techniques to quiet, you know, and then be able to get quiet enough to look past it. Most of the time, like you said, it's just a big fat lie that I've been telling myself maybe for generations.
Yeah.
So.
It's it's very helpful and healthy to always be monitoring your inner state. To really be just noticing when there's a little tension, even on a very subtle level. Not to be obsessing about it, not to be thinking about it. to just be aware that I feel a little funky. I feel a little. Yeah, yeah. You feel the little changes in the barometric pressure. Just they're subtle, right? But you feel them. And so it's like, to really get in the habit of just noticing when there's some tension or tightness, when there's some weirdness, when there's some upset, when there's some contracting, and just and bring consciousness to it. Look, there's no way that anybody sitting in this room or listening to these videos is going to say, I want to create some suffering for myself today. I really want to feel really uncomfortable. It all happens unconsciously, and what we're trying to do is bring our consciousness to it without judgment. To just bring our consciousness to it, to our suffering, to say, okay, I'm clear that the way that my mind is wired and what's happening, that somehow I am creating this state.